Hey, what's up? My name is Chris, and welcome to Coding in Public. I've been really taken with the Astro static site generator that's been out for the last several months. It's technically still in beta, and I plan to do a full walkthrough on the channel at some point. But for now, what I want to show you is just one little tool that it's a component that was created by one of the makers of Astro. It's someone called Nate Moore, and this is the actual doc that'll walk you through how to do it. But what I've got over here on the left is just a basic Astro site scaffolded out that you can get from following the basic instructions at astro.build. And now I want to show you this icon tool, this component for Astro. Now what it's going to do is it's going to allow you to choose from literally thousands of icons, SVG icons, and then embed whatever one you want in your web page. You can even use sprites and just select individual items from the sprite. And you can also use it to compress your own SVGs using SVGO, which is a compressor for SVGs. It's just an example of a really, really well thought out component and the kind of thing that I'm starting to see come up with Astro as it's becoming more popular. All right, so I've got this scaffolded out over this way. Now what I'm going to do is just go ahead and install the Astro icon package here. All right, so we've got that ready to go. And now what I need to do is grab this Vite object here, and we're going to add that to the Astro config. So if I come over here, I can add this right in here, and now we're set up and ready to go. Now what I'm going to do is go ahead and spin up the dev server, so npm run dev, and that should get something up at localhost 3000. And this is the default homepage for the generic theme that you can get, and it kind of walks you through stuff and tells you where you can find out more. The Discord server is great. I've asked a couple questions in there and gotten really quick responses, and it seems like a really great place to learn. All right, so I'm going to jump over this way and kind of walk you through just really briefly what you'll need to know about Astro to be able to figure out what I'm doing with this Astro icon. Now, again, I realize that you're probably not using Astro yet, but I just want to kind of tease you with it, and eventually I'll get around to doing something on the channel with it. So as you can see, pages live in this directory called pages in the src directory, and you can add whatever pages you want. You can change this if you want and just alter how it works in the config file here. But for now, what I've got here is a page, and this is the index.html page. You can see it's a .astro file, and that gives me the ability to add a bunch of front matter. You can see these 3 dashes, and if I were to come down here, the 3 dashes at the bottom, anything in here, you can actually run JavaScript, you can import stuff, you have top level await, you can declare things and then reference them in the file. So it's just a kind of a comfortable way to write, especially if you're doing a lot of static site generation. Now, what we're going to do is come down here and we're going to change some of this basic HTML. I've also got this set up with Tailwind just to make some of the styling we're going to do a little bit quicker. Now, you may have noticed up top here that I'm importing tour. That's a component right here. And if you come down this way, you see I've got this style tag, body, main, header tag, and this is actually all the HTML that's written out in the index.html file. Everything else is just imported with this tour component. And so you can see here, this actually includes a bunch of HTML. It actually uses a default Astro component called Markdown to grab Markdown and transfer it and move it into HTML. So all of this is just coming in this component. So what we're going to do is use some components that come with our Astro icon npm package that we just installed. All right, so let's go ahead and close this out. Let's jump back over here, and he's going to walk you through different options. First of all, he says that you can basically look at any supported icons here. Now let me open this up, and you're going to see like literally every icon pack you've ever wanted. So I can come in here and search for anything, which I'll do in just a second. So you can use any of those, and all you have to do is import this icon up top here. So I'm going to go ahead and do that like this. And then what you can do is reference them either with this icon component with a pack, and then tell it what pack it belongs to, and then the name of the icon, or just kind of compress it and do a shorthand like this. So I'm going to go ahead and grab this, and just anywhere down in the HTML now, I can add this. So let's go ahead. I'm going to go ahead and replace that header with this header on my clipboard. And then inside this div here, I'm going to add the icon component. Now, if I come back over this way, you're going to see that I actually have this icon right here. Now, of course, I'm not limited. First of all, let me close this sidebar. I'm not limited to the example, obviously. I can come over this way and search for anything I want. So like, I don't know, I could do like hamburger. How about that? So hamburger. You can see all these different options, and I can just click one of these, and I'm just copying this script tag out right here. That's all I'm grabbing. And I can, let's go ahead and copy this down. I'm going to add this in like that. I save it, come back this way, there's my hamburger. So literally anything you could want from this entire site, you can copy it in. Of course, it's up to you to pay attention to copyright and how all these things are supposed to be used, But you can see we got phosphor icons, icon park. I mean, everything you could ever want basically in here. Now, there's a couple other things that I want to point out about this. I mentioned that you can import them just individually as icons, but you can also use a sprite, which is basically a way to use, like to package a bunch of SVGs together. So you only have one import, and then you can just grab what you want. Now, in our case, we're going to actually insert the SVG code into our HTML, but still, it's nice to be able to reference it this way. So I'm going to go ahead and copy this import component here, and we'll bring it in up top. And I'm going to come back down this way. And let's go ahead and do the same thing. So you see here, once per page, you have to have the sprite.provider, and then you've got the longer code and then the shorter code. So I'm going to come down this way. Let's go ahead and add it inside here. And so let's get rid of this. I don't need both of these referenced. We can just do the shorthand. That should be fine. All right, let me clean this up. All right, I'll come back over here, and now you see I've got it right here, and I'm grabbing it from the actual sprite. Now, if I were to inspect this, you're going to see that this here is actually just an SVG. And because I'm using a sprite, it's going to use the use tag. But you can see over here, this is just a plain SVG, and it's got all the content of that SVG on the page. So I'm not doing any fetches when a user visits the page. Now, you might be asking a couple of questions. One of them would be, all right, well, can I use my own SVGs? And I mentioned earlier, you can. You've got these local SVGs. And the other thing you may be asking is, okay, I like these components, but what about extra classes? What about my own data attributes or other attributes I want to add? Well, let me show you those kind of one at a time. First of all, if you're using your own local icons, a lot of times what you'll find is with SVGs, they're kind of large. So I've got this site here called TL Draw that I think is kind of cool. I came across it a couple weeks ago and been trying to find an excuse to use it somewhere on the channel, but you can add text and do whatever you want there. You can add all these symbols and letters. You can draw like this. So it's great for just kind of sketching out what an idea might look like. You've got access to a bunch of styles up here where you can change stuff, fill things. Anyhow, all this is possible. And what you can do when you're done here is come here and export this. So let's see, File, Export right here. And I could export this as an SVG. Now here it shows over this way. I'm going to go ahead and open up the sidebar. And I'm going to first of all come over here and place it in my public directory. And then let's rename this to like illustration, something like that. All right, so if I go ahead and come in here and, I'm in the SVG file, sorry. Come back over this way. I'm going to have an image tag, and then I'm going to just reference it with illustration.svg and save it. Come over here. You can see it pulls in right here. And if I actually expand this and look at it, if we were to look at the network tab, we're going to see how expensive it is to bring it in. So you can see here, it's kind of hard to see this. It looks like we're at 9.1 kilobytes, so that's pretty small. A lot of times when you get exports from these kind of build tools, these design tools like Figma or Sketch or whatever, they can be really, really large. And if I were to come look at this tool or this illustration, you can see I've got a bunch of stuff in here. And a lot of this I don't really need. And but it's hard to know exactly what to do. So there's a tool called SVGO, which helps you compress this, and you can run it off your command line. Or what I like to do is use this this kind of GUI editor for it. And what you can do is just grab all this and click here and then just paste the markup directly in there, and it tells you how much it saves. So it says here that it goes from 2.14 down to 1.64. So it saved you quite a bit of space. So usually when I'm using SVGs on my site, I've got to run it through this myself and then copy out the SVG code and replace it over here. But with this icon thing with Astro, you can actually do all this basically with the build tool itself. So what I'm going to do is take this right here, and I'm going to copy it and paste it. We'll duplicate it here. And then Astro Icon tells you to put all of those local packs. You can use packs too, or just your local individual icons inside of a folder named icons in the SRC directory. So I'm going to say icons here, and then let's just drag this over here. I'm going to move it here. And now I'm going to change this, just remove that copy. I don't need that anymore. And I've got the exact same thing there. So it's the exact same file. This time what I'm going to do is pull it in with Astro. Now I can use Astro icon right here because it's just an icon, it's not in a sprite. And in this case, what I can do is just name it by whatever the file is. So illustration. And by default, it's going to look inside the icons directory like that. So if I go ahead and save it, come over this way. Now I've got it in twice. This is the original one that had to be fetched. And then this other one is actually just HTML code. So if I come in here, this is the one that is fetched. This upper one up here is the SVG. You'll notice that not only did it bring it in, but it actually ended up removing a bunch of stuff. So it starts with an SVG tag and just has this. It doesn't have a bunch of other random stuff in it. Whereas if I were to come back over this way and even look at the one in our icons folder, it's got all this stuff at the beginning. And basically it just compressed it as much as possible and made it way smaller. You can see just how easy that was. I basically imported the icon component, and then all I did was right here, add my file name to it. And once again, it embeds it in the page, so there's no fetch at all for the user. Now you can actually import your own sprites as well, your own local packs, and it talks you through how to do that. And then you can also style it. And so you can style it by just using this Astro icon that will apply to every icon, or you can do Astro icon equals and then whatever the name of your file is. Now that one thing to mention about that, if you use the longhand notation, which like in this case would be, if I remove this, you might remember that you could, instead of doing it like that, you could do, what was it, pack equals that. So if you're actually using this, you actually have to put the full thing, this with a colon and hamburger inside this annotation, where this annotation is. So in this case, you can't just use hamburger. You actually have to use the full thing. Now in this case here, they're showing you with a component that you brought in yourself, an SVG you brought in yourself named adjustment, and so that's why they're just being able to name it that way. But if you're using one of these packs, you're going to have to actually reference the pack, colon, and then the name. The last thing I want to mention to you though is you're like, okay, what about styling or adding other classes or things like that? Well, what it says is that it accepts any global HTML attributes and ARIA attributes, and they're just going to be forwarded to the SVG element. So if I come back over this way, let's look at like, I don't know, let's look at this one right here. Maybe let's look at this top one. All right, and you can see this code here. I've got some classes, well, just the one class. Here's the actual astro./icon, and it's telling you it right there. So let's come up top here, and what I'm going to do is just add some extra stuff. So if I said like class with, I don't know, 24 or something like that, and again, I'm using, in this case, Tailwind, but whatever classes you add, you can see that it just gets forwarded to this SVG right here. I might also want to add something like pointer events none. And again, this is a class with Tailwind, and you can see how that gets forwarded as well to here. Now I'm not limited to classes, so I could have my own data attribute like data, I don't know, thing. And then it could be like one thing, all right, whatever. And you can see here, it gets forwarded as a data attribute here. I could also do something like tab index equals -1, something like that. And it just forwards it along to the SVG. So these little icon components might seem simple, but you can basically forward anything you want, any HTML or ARIA attribute along with it, and it will just include it in the SVG when it inserts that into the page. What a great example of just thinking through all the different use cases when you're building out a tool. And I am so impressed with this tool, and I can tell it was really well designed and thought through. I can't wait to see what Astro does next. And look out here in the next maybe couple of weeks or so for a kind of an in-depth walkthrough of how to get started with Astro. I am loving it, and I hope you can play around with it too, and maybe just this icon idea pushes you that way. All right, thanks so much for watching. I will catch you in the next one. Happy coding.